What's going on, guys? Coach Jared here with the Richmond Elite Podcast, episode 5 today. Today's guest is one of our coaches, Lindsey Terronez. Lindsey is an ultra marathon?
Yeah, ultra marathon.
Runner and hybrid athlete, right?
Yeah, if you want to label it, yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to kind of talk today about what goes into running ultra marathons and what her training looks like, because it's kind of crazy. She's basically just running all day long, and then like she'll like come to the gym and then lift and then go run some more and stuff. So definitely Lindsey trains super hard, and I think that a lot of like younger athletes and just athletes in general can kind of take away a lot from her and her story. So Lindsey, tell us your background. I know you played high school sports, so start there and kind of work your way up.
Yes, so high school tennis, a cheerleader, and soccer. So, yep, did all of that. I did not play anything in college. I don't know why. I tried to play tennis. I got injured. Didn't work out. So I felt kind of lost in my journey because I was always on a team. So, like, what do I do now without my team? So it did take me a while to get into lifting and everything else that I'm doing now. I think that the accident I got in 9 years ago kind of really triggered my stardom to lifting and getting in the gym again. So I think when you lose something and you think you've lost it forever, it kind of makes you want to work out more, and just you feel so grateful to be able to walk or be alive and do all that stuff. So I think that really just helped motivate me to get in the gym and really just start hitting weights. And that's kind of where things took off. I mean, Cass Martin, I'm pretty sure you maybe know her, or anyone listening probably knows Cass Martin. She was my like go-to person back in like 2015 just to get workouts from. So I just followed her program for a while and then kind of ventured off into my own, found CrossFit. Started doing CrossFit and everything that went along with that. So I did that heavily for like 4 years. And then I signed up for an Ironman.
Yeah.
Randomly, never freaking swam before in my life. I had some people that I knew that were doing this Ironman in Georgia. So I decided to sign up. And then COVID hit and they deferred the race. And then the year after that, I just panicked and wasn't ready to do an Ironman. So then I deferred again. And then finally, I was like, okay, I need to actually train and do this. So trained super hard for 3 months for this Ironman, and I was absolutely terrified to swim. No joke. I think that's what I practiced the hardest for, was to swim. Like, I could not swim to save my life.
Swimming sucks. Swimming's hard.
Awful. It's so awful. You know, it's so different. You can swim to kind of like be in the ocean or whatever, but when you're swimming freestyle laps, it is a totally different ball game. So yeah, I trained really hard for that and then completed it.
Yep.
Did my first half Ironman, and then I was like, man, if I could do this. I don't know where this thought came from, by the way. It was just like a weird thought I had. If I can do this, if I can do 70.3 miles, I can do an ultra. And I truly had no idea what the mentality for that at the time would entail.
Can you explain what an ultra is?
Yeah, so an ultra marathon is anything over a marathon. So anything over that is considered an ultra marathon. Most of, I guess, the popular ones I would say are, 50-miler, stuff like that.
I was going to say, because you're not running, like, the ones that I've heard that you are doing, you're not running 27 miles. Like, you're not running, like, just barely over 26, right? Like, there's ultra marathons, and then there's, like, the stuff that you do.
Yeah, so, like, 50s, 100s. I mean, I feel like there's so many different types of ultras you can do now. But mostly I do trail.
Okay.
So there are road ultras, like, all that stuff, different types. But I mostly do trail. I think that it's a little more scenic than just being on the pavement for hours and hours. But
it's going to get kind of boring, right? Like, I mean, if you weren't on a trail, right? Like just on a pavement.
I've done, like, you've seen me. I leave from the gym and I'll go out and do, I think like one day I did like 27 miles And I was just out here on the streets
You just ran over a marathon. Just decided to
from
do
the
that.
gym. Yeah, I had to. Part of my training.
Part of your
Yeah,
training.
part of the training.
Which is funny because like people who run marathons, like they're not doing that for their training probably, right? Very often.
Right,
They're
yeah.
they're probably running like intervals or like a much shorter
like
distance.
tempo.
Yeah, and then they're getting there and they're gradually building up to the 26 miles, right? And they're
Yeah.
probably like again, they're not probably running 26 miles ever in training, right?
Right. Yep.
So
They'll
anyways,
probably
you're
get
just
to
like,
maybe
I'm going to
like
do that.
20 or maybe like 21 or something like that
Sure.
if they were really, I guess, trying to push.
Yeah.
But there's ultra marathon runners, by the way, that will run farther than I did before my 50 or my 100. They're just like at a different level than I'm currently
Right.
at. So, and
David Goggins.
right? Oh yeah.
I think what's he run like? I mean,
Yo, he's crazy.
yeah, he runs
Like
like,
his mentality and his mind are like so different.
and honestly, I'm a bit of a skeptic, so I've always kind of been like, oh, all right, how much of that stuff is he doing? But then after seeing you run as much as you run, I'm like, well, if she does that, I mean, maybe he actually does run that much. And then I'm like, also like, I was kind of at first, I'm like, how? Like you tell me, I ran, how many miles today? Like you'd be like, I ran 10 miles today. And it's like you're gone for so long. I'm like, you're either like parking up at a Starbucks and you're just like telling me that you're running this, or you're actually just running. So
I think the day I ran to the 27, I had started early in the morning. You had just started work, and then you actually left for your lunch break.
yeah,
And I was still running, and you had come back for like your 3 o'clock clients, and I was finally finishing, and you're just like,
I was like,
are you still running? I was like, yeah.
That's crazy.
I just got done.
Okay, so real quick, I want to touch on your accident. Like, I don't know how much you want to like dive into it, but basically, you were hit by a car, right? And probably lucky to survive the accident, right?
Yeah, so
and
lucky.
Because you said that really shaped you and kind of made you grateful for the ability to do all the things that you can still do. So just kind of dive more into like how that affected you and how it kind of put you on the journey you're on, because I think a lot of people go through, maybe not that, but they go through something tragic in their lives, right? Or they go through an injury in sports. I think that could be something they can relate to, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, well, how do you respond to that?
Yeah. Well, I was working inside a restaurant. A car just apparently mistaked the accelerator for the brake, crashed into the building, went through the front doors, went through this kind of wall-ish area where a projector screen was up, crashed through that, hit me, hit the person that I was serving, and then drove almost into the bar area. So they went pretty far into the building. But yeah, that's kind of what happened. I got hit from behind and shoved to the side, whereas the person I was serving actually got hit and had a lot more serious injury than what I had. And unfortunately, he didn't survive. So in that way, I just felt so grateful, one, to be able to like sit here and talk about it today. But there was definitely a lot of trauma after that, like PTSD. I couldn't walk for 2.5 months. I had a lot of abrasions and all that stuff. So I had to go to physical therapy. I had knee surgery. And that's kind of what like started, I guess. It took some time. I think it took a year for me to physically recover.
Sure.
I actually started going to Orange Theory, which is so, like, there's nothing wrong with Orange Theory. I loved it. But I started out there, and then once I felt comfortable enough to work out and I guess do things on my own without this setting of having an instructor and other people around me, that's when I started going into the gym and lifting. And I think that just being grateful to, one, still be able to walk, because there was a point in the hospital where I couldn't feel the ortho exams the doctor was doing on my lower half of my body. So they kind of had this concerned look like, oh, we need to really check things out and make sure that like lower back or anything isn't damaged or broken, or spinal cord injury, stuff like that. So there was kind of that brief moment in the ER that, am I going to be able to walk again?
Yeah.
So that's really just what pushed me to keep going. And then obviously the person who died, just knowing that their life was cut so short. He was only 18. So,
Wow.
I mean, he had so much more life left to live. And it was just very hard for me to understand at that time, like, why did I survive? Like, why do I
Right.
get this second chance? So I think after like working through all of that, it just really motivated me to push really hard,
Yeah.
and especially in like really difficult situations. So I think again why ultra running is something I like so much is because you go through so much pain, this like up and down, so many emotions, and then you like come out on top finishing a race.
All right. That's what I kind of want to touch on is like, and we've talked about it. Like, I don't think I would ever have any interest in doing what you do,
Yeah.
but I think some of the athletes that we train, like there are a lot of youth athletes or just, people who want to get in better shape. And I don't think they quite understand. Sometimes I'm saying how someone could want to endure like pain or suffering, right?
Yeah.
Like why would you want to do that to yourself, right? And like I've probably said that to you jokingly,
Oh,
but
absolutely.
in my life I've endured a lot of pain, maybe just in another way of training, and I've had the same things. Like why would you want to do that? Why would you want to, train that hard and do that to your body? And I don't always have a good answer for it, to be honest. Um, but I was hoping maybe you could articulate like why you feel like you need to run and do the things that you do.
Yeah, like you said, I think everyone will have a different reason for why. A lot of the people that I've met in the ultra running world, they've gone through some stuff, some
Yeah.
heavy, heavy things. And I think that that's their way of just, they've been through dark places before and they're pushing through and they know they can survive and get through it. But for me, I've also, I guess, been in a pretty dark place before where I thought that I like couldn't get out. And I think that ultra running was a way for me to take that pain and know that I can get through it because I'm experiencing it in the moment while I'm in the race.
Yep.
So I think that I don't even know what it was. The first ultra I did was only 50 miles. And I came back and was back in the gym 2 days later, like on the treadmill, running
Yeah.
again.
That's crazy.
Like crazy person. But I had so much energy and I wanted to do it again. Like I'm like, okay, if I can do 50, I can do 100.
Right.
And I will say this, I don't think I love running. I think I love the mental fortitude that it takes to be able to do these races.
So do you think you love knowing that you are capable, right? Or like, because, sometimes, like I'm going to talk business a little bit more just because that's kind of what I'm going through now, but you go through hard times, right? Too, just like anything else. And one of the things that gets me through the hard times is I go, well, the reason that you're going to succeed is because you're willing to go through this, right? And you almost can frame it like, well, other people aren't going through this, right?
Yeah.
Therefore, they're not going to reap the benefits that I'm going to reap, right? And so, I don't know. I guess like when you're in the middle of running, right? Like, and it sucks. Like,
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you're pulling from? Or, I mean, I don't know. I literally am trying to figure out like what could possibly be going through your brain while you're running that far.
There's so many things. There's so many things. There's so many ups and downs. I guess I can just talk about this last one I just did. So I just did Hennepin 100. It's like a local race, starts in Sterling, Illinois. It was so hot that day, and I love the heat. I do. Like most of my training was done at noon, peak heat of the summer.
Yep.
So a lot of people were struggling during that time, and I was loving it like a crazy person that I am. But in that moment, I had to kind of think about, okay, I have so much race left, kind of tone it down a little bit. So I'm kind of being strategic when I'm running. So part of it, I'm thinking of strategy. The other part, when I'm in so much pain, it's 3 a.m, I still have 20 miles left to go or however many miles, and I'm suffering and I want to quit and I'm cussing. I start thinking about the things that I've been through. And I think a lot of other ultramarathon runners probably think about that too. Like, I've gone through this. You can get through this moment that you're in right now. You can tough it out. You can move forward. And then a lot of it too is just motivating myself. Like, I told my class that I coach, I actually told a couple of them, especially when they're doing CrossFit workouts and there's a minute left. I'm like, you can do anything in a minute.
Yeah.
Like, push a little bit harder. I know you have something left. So later on in the race, when I'm running for 2 minutes, walking for a minute, when we get to the top of the minute and I have 1 minute left to run, I am just struggling and I am in so much pain. And I'm like, man, if I can yell at the people at CrossFit that they have 1 minute left and they can do anything in a minute. So I just kind of thought about that too while I was running. But there's just so much that goes through your mind in those races.
But I guess, what are you hoping to get out of it? You know, because that's, I mean, I'm asking you questions that sometimes I think I struggle with as an athlete too, or I did struggle with as an athlete. And I know, again, different sports, but I think as an athlete, sometimes you have to, you know, obviously professional athletes, maybe in the, you know, like basketball or football, they're hoping to get some money out of it, right?
Oh, yeah,
and there's
absolutely.
like, maybe there's sponsorship opportunities with what you do and with what I did. But really, I mean, we both know that's not really why you're doing it. So do you know, like, I mean, can you figure out, I guess, like, do you want to have a feeling after you're done? Is that kind of what you're going for? I know the runner's high, is that a thing?
Oh, yeah. Runner's high for sure. It's a thing.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. When you feel it, it's great.
I've my buddy Mitch, you know Mitch,
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, that's not real.
Yeah, no,
I
no.
never ran far enough to
It
feel
is.
that.
Yeah, it is. Um, well, I think the biggest thing is being a hybrid athlete. Like, I have a goal that I always have set. I'm not just being a hybrid athlete just because it's current mainstream hype. I have a goal. So when I did the 50, the goal became to do 100. After I ran my first 100, I didn't perform as well as I wanted to. So I'm so hard on myself, you know that. I said, I can do it faster. I can do it better. So then I signed up for the next 100. And I didn't get the goal that I wanted in this 100, but I shaved off 3 hours and 11 minutes, which is crazy. I didn't think I could do that, especially same season of running,
Right.
less than 3 months apart. So the goal was sub 24. So now that I didn't hit that, but I did do better, I want to go for a sub 24, like 100 miler, which would
That's
be
crazy.
awesome.
So what does it mean to be a hybrid athlete, I guess? And like, why would, because I can see the appeal, and I think maybe what I see is like, you want to be like almost the most well-rounded version of yourself, right? Like, you want to build your body and your physiology and, you know, your mindset and everything. It's like, I feel like being a hybrid athlete kind of, I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong, but it's the idea is that you want to be about as well-rounded as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is the goal. Also, I mean, it's really just incorporating strength with cardio and
Right.
being good at it. The biggest problem is you kind of almost take away from your peak ability
Absolutely.
to do one or the other. So, I mean, as you saw, we tried to maintain my strength for as long as we could going into my first ultra.
Yep.
And we did a really good job. It was extremely hard, but we did a good job. But eventually, now that I started training for 100, I really couldn't
Right.
maintain that strength of throwing like almost 200 pounds into a clean and then going out and running like 10 miles that day.
And you know, we talked about this when I was coaching you, is like, I don't come from a generalist background. I come from a specialist background, right?
Yeah.
So, when I had to, you know, be careful, because you obviously have a running coach, right? And, you know, I work with athletes whose sole goal is to lift more weights, right? And I said, like, multiple times, I'd always be like, you know, you got to remember, like, this, I know this isn't your sole goal or your ultimate goal, I guess. So we had to be very careful with certain components. And I think, you know, like I said, I think it's good. I think it's good for people to understand the difference between, and I think it's good for them to understand that you can be very, very close to maybe what you're capable of in each realm, just maybe not, you know, the absolute peak of it. Because, I mean, let's be honest, like, you aren't built like most, ultra runners or long distance runners, right?
Yeah.
And so you might be better suited as a hybrid athlete, right? Because you're probably built closer to like a weightlifter, right? And you're not necessarily built like a weightlifter either because you're really tall.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think maybe for you, you're just better suited as like a hybrid athlete, right?
No.
Well, like I can tell
I'm
you
just
right now,
joking.
like I mean, I'm 5'8", and
Are you really?
yeah, you
You're
think I was
5'8"?
taller?
Yeah, I did.
So I'm 5'8", and I weigh like 200 pounds. Like not probably the best build to run very far, and
Dude, you'd be surprised.
Really?
Surprised. I'm pretty sure the guy who just won Hennepin was like your height or just an inch taller. And if I'm wrong, I'm
There's
sorry.
no
but,
way he weighs
like,
200 though,
no, I was
right?
taller than him. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, but how much does he weigh?
He was pretty fit. I'm not
Really?
gonna lie. He was fit. Some of these guys, you'll be so surprised. There was women
Yeah.
older than me who probably don't lift weights. They beat me in this race. Like you'll never know what you'll find in an ultra marathon,
Yeah.
and that's what's kind of so cool about it.
Okay, cool. And then you mentioned something about or you mentioned that you started in CrossFit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And or that was kind of one of your, right after, was it college you got into CrossFit, or after Orange Theory maybe?
Yeah, Orange Theory moved into the gym, just weight training.
General, yep.
And then moved into Orange Theory.
The reason I bring it up is just because
CrossFit.
that's where I started, right? And that was my gateway out of athletics in high school. And I just think a lot of people start with CrossFit, and I think we should give a lot of credit there. You know, some people don't like to give it any credit, but it's like, I bet if you look around at a lot of like the strength athletes today, a lot of them were introduced to what they're doing through CrossFit.
Yeah.
And it is an awesome general program, right? For a lot of people. Obviously, it's kind of goes back to what we talked about. If you want to specialize in something, you probably have to specialize from there. But it's just funny, like when I talk to a lot of athletes, and a lot of strength athletes started out through CrossFit.
Yeah, I loved CrossFit. I mean, I still do it as much as
Yeah.
I can. Just the closer I get to a race, I have to kind of let it go, put it on the back burner until I'm done with the race, because it gets to be too much. Same thing for lifting, like deloading.
Right.
And you've like always helped me out with that when I'm getting towards a race, because I feel like I'm really bad at forcing myself to deload.
Sure.
It's
Because what it is, I think, or you're even talking more like tapering, right, for the meet, right?
Yep, tapering. Yep.
So, because what you're essentially doing is you're pulling from your long-term development to maximize your short-term performance at the competition, right? Like I always tell people, it's like it's like when you have all this money stacked in the bank and then you go and buy the car. It's like now you don't have the money, but you do have the car, right? And so it's hard in one way to like go spend it, but now you actually have the thing. So that's what, tapering or peaking or, like deloading, you're training slightly less, right? But in hopes to rest, recover, and adapt, and then have your best day on this day. And I think a lot of athletes that come from like ball sports, right, like basketball or whatever in high school, their seasons are so long that they don't really understand the process of like peaking. But you still can, like, the way we develop youth programs is like our off-season training looks a lot different than our in-season training, right? And so we do want to, peak for the season. The other thing is, though, we can think of this on a very long-term basis. So like you might have a race that's, a year away that your goal is like, I want to do well at this race. But you might have races that are before then that you don't really care as much about as this race. So you might train through that event, right? And so like in my world, training through a meet, right? So if I have a couple meets that they're like local meets that I have to do maybe to qualify for the bigger meets, the point is I won't peak for it. I won't taper for it. I'll train the day before if I have to. And I know that my performance on the competition day won't maybe be quite as good. So can you talk about like what your training looks like right now? Like just kind of describe, hey, here's maybe during the weekdays, or I start out most of my training days like this. It's mostly this, mostly that. So just a general idea, and then we can get a little bit more specific.
Okay. So right now, since I've kind of finish my running season,
Mm-hmm.
it's a little different. But in the beginning, so back in like April, May, I was pretty much running 5 to 6 times a week.
Okay.
And still trying to incorporate lifting 3 to 4 times a week.
With that, are you getting a lot of, joint issues, any tendonitis? How do you manage that?
I mean, thankfully, my body's been doing really well. Go see a chiro.
Yep.
I think keeps me in line, keeps me in good health. And then obviously like soft tissue work always. But it is a lot and it is demanding. And I think a lot of people forget that about that hybrid training lifestyle. You have to be very dedicated.
So a lot of like you said, your chiro, soft tissue stuff, you're doing a lot of things outside of your training to kind of help you recover, right?
Yeah, for sure. And like active recovery days or a lot of stretching.
Yep.
I mean, running, I feel like you have to stretch before you have your like 3-hour run, and then you have like 20 minutes after of stretching again. So it's a lot and it takes a lot of time.
And I'm assuming you had to build up to where you're at, right? Like, I think that's a lot of what people, they're hearing what you're saying and they're like, I got to run all these miles. And when I talk to athletes, I like to help them understand, like, my understanding of injuries and why they happen from a fundamental level is that the stress that you imparted on the tissue exceeded the capacity of the tissue, right? And so the idea is, the example I give is like, let's say day one, the first day I ever tried to back squat, if I tried to back squat 500 pounds and I like unracked it and I went down, my knees would have exploded.
Yeah.
Right. But over the course of, years, I built up the capacity to be able to back squat 500 pounds and it didn't. So the point is that when I did back squat 500 pounds, my capacity was potentially a little bit higher than that. And so I could withstand the forces that were imparted onto my joints. Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing, right? With running is like, you had to build a capacity over time to be able to, your joints and ligaments to be able to withstand running crazy amounts of miles. Right.
Yeah. I will say, I think coming from lifting with you over the years or just having you as a coach, someone to guide me through Olympic lifting and CrossFit, set me up to be able to kind of become that type of athlete, especially coming from like a soccer background or having run half marathons before. I will say I did jump into hardcore hybrid training too quickly,
Sure.
Which can happen. A lot of people get excited and they want to do all this stuff, but they don't realize that you can't just go from just lifting and then trying to incorporate all of this extra volume for a week. Like you have to, like you said, gradually get to that point. Mm-hmm. And I basically just went from, okay, I've been lifting 5 days a week. Now I'm also going to start running in hardcore 4 to 5 days a week. So I was doing 2-a-days, 4 to 5 days a week right off the bat, which is crazy. And you used to say you're crazy all the time to me. It was probably about a month and a half in that I got a little burnt out. I realized I probably shouldn't have gone so hard so fast. I should have taken a little bit more of a gradual approach to getting into that.
But you lived, right?
I know.
And I think sometimes people, like, of course I'm saying, hey, we need to, gradually build into things. But I think sometimes throwing your foot to the fire isn't always the worst thing, because you learn.
Yeah.
And that's what, like, people, they're afraid to set goals sometimes, or, youth athletes, a lot of times they're afraid to train. And it's like, I think, you might have to get to the point where you feel, hey, okay, this volume does make my knees start to ache a little. And I need to learn what that threshold is, and then I can kind of back off from there. But I think more people suffer from, I don't train hard enough than overtraining. Wouldn't you? I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Like we're in the world of like, maybe where most of us, like the people that we surround ourselves with, probably overtrain. But that's not the general demographic of people, right? I think more people need to learn how to train hard than how to dial it back, right? It's like, I would almost say, like, most of the top athletes, like, for example, when I was self-coached for the first part of my career. And when I finally got a coach, the first thing he did was told me, you're training too much, like you're training too much, or the type of training you're doing is too hard. You're going to get hurt if you keep doing it this way. And,
Right,
so it's just funny. I bet that more people need to learn, hey, work hard than dial it back. But, you also, like, all the things that you did in your life, like you said, you played tennis and, soccer, and obviously all the strength training, the CrossFit that you've done, all those things also helped you build a capacity to be able to jump right into training. I think probably more so than a lot of people. And that's like me. I played basketball, I played baseball, I played football, golf. And, in high school, I didn't lift weights in high school at all. Like, a lot of people don't know that I didn't lift weights in high school at all.
Which is wild.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? And so really, I did start my kind of fitness journey in high school. My sophomore year of high school, I was 182 pounds and I was kind of chunky, but I got the opportunity to be the starting point guard on the varsity basketball team that year. And I was a very good basketball player from a skills perspective, but I didn't work the hardest. I wasn't in good shape. I didn't eat right. I didn't do all the other things right. I liked to play basketball, and I was good at playing basketball. But eventually, like, as a sophomore on the varsity team, the older guys are always looking at things that they can give you a hard time about, and they would always poke fun at, like, me carrying around a little extra weight, especially for a basketball player. Like, basketball players are usually pretty lean, right? And then the coach, actually, he started kind of joining in and poking fun once in a while, and I was kind of like, all right, dude. And that's kind of when I started my fitness journey, I think, truthfully. And really that just started with nutrition and, like, starting to watch what I ate. And so I went from 182 pounds my sophomore year to 162 pounds my junior year to 142 pounds my senior year. And again, like, that wasn't the healthiest thing I've ever done. I got a lot weaker because I didn't train, right? Like I mentioned, I didn't weight train in high school at all. That was just eating very little food. But what it did do is it taught me the discipline, and it kind of got me into the fitness world. And then when basketball was no longer the goal, I'm like, okay, I don't want to just be like the skinny guy with the abs. I want to start training. And that's when I started training, found CrossFit. And eventually I became, a national medalist weightlifter within 3 years of training. And well, the point that I'm getting at with all this is like that, all of those things that I did growing up, all the sports that I played, and all of the things that even though I didn't lift weights in high school, a lot of that helped me build the capacity to be able to train hard enough to become a national, medalist in 3 years of training. And it's the same thing with you, is like, you've been able to become, you didn't run marathons when I first met you, right?
Gosh, no, I don't even think at that point I had done a half marathon before.
Right. And so, but you were doing CrossFit when I met you, right? And you were very fit, and, you had started out, you said you had done Orange Theory, you'd done all these things. And so I just think that sometimes it's important for people to understand that no matter what you're doing fitness wise, it's carrying over most likely to other things. And so one goal, like, everybody's always worried about what should my goal be. And I think it maybe should just be like, just pick one and go for it. And you're going to learn a lot during that process. Yeah. Right. And it's going to suit you for the next goal. It's going to help you for the next goal. Right. So, I just wanted to talk a little bit more about how you got up to that running a million miles.
Lots and lots of training. Yeah. Like, it was discipline. Like, you have to really have discipline. Especially when you're lifting and you're running. It takes up a lot of time.
Right.
I think a lot of people don't really understand that when it comes to the hybrid lifestyle or setting a goal too. Like, I know we just talked about setting a goal, but it takes a lot of discipline and time.
I think people are afraid to set goals, right? Sometimes because they're not going to achieve them.
Right, exactly.
And I think you've probably set a lot of goals that you didn't achieve. I've set a lot of goals that I didn't achieve. But if I wouldn't have set the goal, I wouldn't even been close to achieving them, right? And I achieved a lot of other, like, smaller goals by setting these really lofty goals. And I learned a lot during the process of trying to achieve those goals. So I don't ever regret setting a goal that I didn't achieve. And I think, a lot of our youth athletes, I really want them to set lofty goals and go for them. And I think too many people get hung up on, like, oh, what should the goal be? It's like, just set a goal and push towards it, and you're going to learn, right? You're going to learn from it.
Well, people give up way too easily nowadays.
Exactly.
Way too easily. It's like you're not going to get there right away. You actually have to work hard and go for it. Like,
That kind of it kind of reminds me of like, so I always tell people that I got into weightlifting a little bit too late in life, and a lot of people I think that I was too old for the sport in the sake of like my body, which I think there's maybe some of that, but what I more mean is when I was in college, I could train all the time. But once I got out of college, I had to start working, right? Yeah. And it makes it a lot harder to train as much, right? And it makes it, and I'm not saying you can't do it. I mean, you do a fantastic job of it. But it's a little bit challenging to balance everything, right? Where if you would get into the sport, if I got in the sport of weightlifting when I was 12 years old and I don't have any responsibilities until I'm, essentially out of college, so you're like 22, you got a long time to dedicate to training. And what I mean by that is like, it's just, I don't know. I think a lot of youth athletes take that time for granted. It's like, this is your time to train, man. Train. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of people. I mean, you are somebody who, on a lunch break or whatever, like you're just running and doing those things. And I think a lot of people don't realize how difficult that is as you get older.
Oh yeah. Especially when you have full-time job or if people have kids, stuff like that. It does get very hard. But for me, I think that having that goal, knowing this is what the goal is, if you don't put in the work, you're going to look bad. And maybe not necessarily bad, but
sure,
I'm not going to get to where I want to be.
Put your pride into it a little bit. I do that. I like to put goals out there a lot. Like you've seen me kind of, I enjoy like a good like cut. Like I'll be like, I like to just kind of, it's for me though, because I'm goal oriented. I don't like to just like maintain like my body weight. Like I just like to, I'm going to get like stronger and I'm gonna eat a lot right now. And then, okay, like I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to cut weight. But I'll usually tell people like that I'm doing that. And like, for me, it just is a pride thing of like, okay, I've been telling people that I'm eating better and I'm doing these things and like, it's going to show or it's not going to show.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, the same way. I'm so hard on myself too. Like,
well, I don't think you can be
own worst critic.
Good.
For sure.
I don't think you could be a good athlete and not be hard on yourself. Mm-hmm. Right. So, all right, to wrap it up, can you tell me like, if you were to give me like kind of one thing that, you would focus on as like a youth athlete or some one principle maybe that you would kind of work on?
So I endure, like just endure. Like we are built to endure, and do hard things. So the biggest thing I think is mentality. Mm-hmm. If they have the right mentality, the right headspace, you can go far. Like truly, I really believe that. I mean, I wouldn't be able to finish these races without a strong mentality. Right. And I think that's a great foundation for an athlete because you're going to go through a lot of losses, a lot of hurt, a lot of pain. But if you can't get past that, you're not going to move on to the next level.
I love that. And I think it goes back to like I was talking to somebody today and people are always kind of like the kids want to kind of jump steps. They want to go heavier than what they should. They want to do this. They want to do that. And, I think they want to like say, look like me or look like somebody that they see on Instagram very quickly. And it's like, dude, I've been doing this for 10 years.
Exactly. Yeah. It doesn't come easy. It doesn't
So I had to endure a lot of things. Like I had to just keep going. And, I think it goes back to business. Like, there's gyms that shut down and, and there's gyms that just endure and you guys have to endure. And usually the person who can endure the longest wins, right? The person who can train the longest. Mm-hmm. And that kind of goes back to like, if I could have trained at the same amount of hours that I trained in college longer, I probably would have been better, right? And so if I was able to endure a little bit longer, I probably would have been better. And I think everybody gets impatient and they think that people like you that run crazy amounts of miles or people like me that have lifted a lot of weight at one point just got there overnight. And it's like, no, we just endured longer than you. Like you started the journey, but you just didn't keep going, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I remember when we were working on Snatch, like when you first opened over there. And how long ago was that?
4 years. 4 years. Over 4 years.
Yeah, I couldn't even, I think, get 125 over my head.
Right.
Now that's like...
It's easy.
Easy.
But it took you a minute.
It took me a while. Yeah, absolutely. Especially to incorporate that into then going to run 10 miles right after. It crazy, took time. Right? So I think that people just need to be patient and know they can endure and
All right. Let people know where they can find you. You're pretty good at social media. You're big on the TikTok. So tell people, what's your TikTok?
TikTok is just my name, Lindsey Terronez, and then
Instagram.
Instagram, Linz_0511.
All right, cool. And then, I guess Lindsay's a coach here. So if you want to be coached by Lindsay,
Yeah, come see us.
Come see us, and you can get coached by this animal.
I'm better.
Than me?
Is that
what you mean?
Yeah, I'm better.
All right, fine.
Oh, you'll have more fun in my class.
Oh yeah,
He'll make you cry.
I've done both.
Yeah.
Jeez, dude. You're not supposed to tell people that.
No, we're fun. Come see us.
All right, guys. We'll see you next time on the Richmond Elite Podcast.